To you all. So tonight we'll continue with our study of Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And tonight we will continue from chapter 2, verse 47. So as we discussed previously, in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is desiring not to fight in this battle of Kurukshetra because he is feeling overwhelmed with the prospect of having to possibly kill his family members. So that's something that all of us would find extremely difficult. You know, and imagine if you're sent into battle with your cousins, your own family, and you have to kill them, or they will kill you. Well, it's a very difficult situation, something that none of us will probably ever have to face. But Arjuna was asked to do this. And who is asking him to do this? Krishna, God himself, is asking him to do this. So what does this exemplify or teach us? That ultimately, if we want to progress in spiritual life, we have to learn to surrender. We have to give up our own selfish desires for the satisfaction of Krishna, of God himself. And if you do that, then you progress in bhakti, you progress in devotion, and you become a self-realized personality. So that's basically where we're up to. If you have any questions or comments as we go, please ask. So tonight we'll continue from verse number 47 of the Bhagavad Gita. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. This is a famous verse from the Bhagavad Gita. In India, it's particularly famous. They quote this a lot in India. Because they don't quote the entire verse. That's the interesting point. And this is common all over the world in religions and spiritual teachings, and just in general. People just take a little bit of knowledge to suit themselves. Oh, it says this, so I can do this. But you're not taking it in its entire context. And with this particular verse, it's often quoted, you have the right to perform your prescribed duty. And they say this in India all the time. Do your duty, work, basically, because that's the philosophy of the modern age. Work hard, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. What for? What's the point of that? Why are humans meant to work 10 or 12 hours? That's not the goal of life. Then what happens? You just work and leave a rich corpse. You know, you're dead, and now your corpse is rich. You're dead. It doesn't mean anything. But what's the point of life? If you're not using your time to become self-realized or Krishna conscious, God conscious, then what's the point of your life? So they quote this first part of the verse, you should do your duty. But they don't quote the entire verse because they just want people to work. Do your duty, do your duty. And actually, if you look around the world, India is now the most populated country on the planet. And when you travel around the world, you see so many Indian people in all the different countries of the world, right, working. And it's interesting, they get employed, like in Australia, you know, there's thousands in Australia. Between 3 and 4% of the Australian population is Indian. It's a huge amount of people. Why? Because they know they're reliable. That's part of the culture. Do your duty. It's part of the culture. Be dutiful. Sometimes, we hear around the world that people have employment issues. People who are trying to hire people, they find it difficult because people are not reliable. Whereas it's known in many cases that Indian people are reliable. That's why they get jobs in so many places and they're employed. Why? Because they have this sentiment, do your duty, which we should do. Krishna is saying here, do your duty. But that's all they quote. They just quote that part, do your duty. But then what does Krishna say next? You're not entitled to the fruits of action. Right? You can work, but you're not entitled to the fruits. So what are the fruits in this modern day and age? Why do you go to work? For money, right? What's money? Like if you don't get paid, will you go? Will you work 10 or 12 hours a day? And most people won't. People work 10 or 12 hours a day or longer. You won't do it if you don't get paid, if you don't get the fruit. I was a monk for 8 years, a brahmachari. I didn't get paid a cent, but I worked hard every day for Krishna, for my guru, right? Because that's what Krishna's saying here. You're not entitled to the fruit. I didn't want the fruit. When I was a monk, I raised over $500,000 for the Hare Krishna movement in Melbourne. I didn't keep a cent. I didn't bother me. And when I left being a monk, I didn't have 1 cent to my name. And it didn't bother me because I was following Krishna's teachings here. You can work, do your duty, but you're not entitled to the fruit of the work. However, if you're married or you're in a family situation or you're in this world, you're entitled to keep some of the fruit, but not all of it. That's the point. People think, oh, they work and it's all for me. And you can do that. And that's what most people do. They work and it's all for them, but they're not happy. Because you become happy when you sacrifice, when you give part of your fruit to Krishna, to God, to your guru. Then you become purified because you learn to become selfless. And that's what bhakti or devotion is about. And then the verse says, never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities. You're not the cause. Right? Some people think, I became a millionaire. I became a billionaire. You didn't cause that. Right? Part of it is caused by you because you worked hard. Yes, that's true. Part of it, but not all of it. Because some people work hard their whole lives and they have nothing. And other people don't work as hard and they have so much. So it's not just because of you. Don't think you're just the cause. Because everything can be taken away in a moment. We have to understand this point. And then the final thing Krishna says is, never be attached to not doing your duty. Right? Don't be attached to not doing your duty. Right? We need to be dutiful. Right? Particularly, if you're working for a boss, the boss wants you to be dutiful. He wants you to turn up on time, work hard, and then, finish on time. Or some bosses aren't very grateful. And some are, but some are not. Right? It's different. Some people are very grateful. So, as it says here, never be attached to not doing your duty. Particularly if your boss is Krishna, God, or your guru, who you're fully devoted to. Don't be attached to not doing your duty. Give everything fully. Don't be miserly in your devotion. Do your best at all times. This is one thing we have to learn in Krishna consciousness. Whenever we're given a task or a duty or a service, because a service is a great, how do you call it? It's a great privilege. if you're giving service to Krishna, service to God, service to the deities, to your guru, this is a great privilege. So do it to the best of your ability. This way you'll progress in your spiritual life. Okay. Text number 48. Perform your duty equipoised, O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success and failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. So Krishna is speaking here on an advanced platform of spiritual consciousness. In other words, this is what it means to be yoga. The word yoga means connection. You are connected to Krishna, to God, when you just do your duty with equanimity, right? Abandoning success or failure. Because sometimes, I'm experiencing this right now in my service to Krishna. Sometimes you're successful, other times you fail, and you have equipoise. It doesn't mean you stop doing your service. It's just like in any relationship, like in marriage or some committed relationship. You don't just drop out of the relationship because it gets difficult, right? You try to work through the difficulties. So in the same way, sometimes in this material world, we're serving Krishna, serving God, but we go through challenges or difficulties, but we don't stop. We become equipoise. Success or failure, I'll continue to serve. So Prabhupada says in the commentary, in the purport, one has to become the servant of Krishna, or the servant of Krishna. That is the right way to discharge duty in Krishna consciousness, which alone can help one to act in yoga. So we have to become the servant of the servant. Right? This is our consciousness. You have to abandon attachment, right? Because sometimes things don't always work out the way you want, but you have to be there. And Krishna will test you. God will test you. He will say, are you willing to serve me under all circumstances? Right? Will you just serve me when everything's good? Which is what so many people do. When things are good, I'll serve. I'll be devoted. But when things are challenging, sometimes they reject or they abandon their faith. Right? So this is the test. A real devotee of Krishna, he will not abandon his faith. That's the point. O Dhananjaya, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service, and in that consciousness surrender unto the Lord. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. Very nice verse. So I quote this sometimes when I'm giving lectures. And it's another famous verse, and it's a very nice verse. Keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service. Why do we perform abominable activities? Abominable activities refers to sense gratification or activities which are just selfishly for our own pleasure, which is basically what the whole world does. Right? Everyone just wants to please themselves. Basically, that's the psychology of the modern world. So how do you keep that mentality away? How do you stop yourself from doing those kind of activities? Right? You keep those things far distant by devotional service, by dedicating your activities, your thoughts, your words, your deeds to the service of Krishna, to the service of God. And when you do that, you don't have time for the other activities, right? And you're not attached to the other activities. I remember years ago, my guru went to like an educate someplace, like some sort of school, university or something. And he was saying, explaining to the students as devotees of Krishna, the people in the Hare Krishna movement, 4 things that we choose to abstain from. Meat eating, we don't eat meat. Illicit sex, don't have sex outside of marriage. Intoxication, don't take any intoxicating things. And gambling. They're 4 things we don't do. Right? It's to become a Hare Krishna, they're the 4 things. So then one of the students said to my guru, what do you do for fun? Because that's the whole world, right? Eat meat, take intoxication, have sex, and gamble. That's basically material life, right? And we don't do that. Why? And then he says, and for us, it's not even attractive. We're not even attracted to those activities. Why? Because we've got so much service to do to Krishna. So we're happy and we're satisfied. So we don't need those things. So Krishna says here, keep all those things far distant by devotional service. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. You know, a miser is someone who has a lot of money but won't use it for other people or for good causes. They want to keep it all for themselves. We shouldn't be like that. We should do our service for Krishna, for God, for his pleasure, right? And if we get some, we live a good life. We live a good life. Everything's good. We live in a nice place. We have good food to eat. We have good, it's a nice life that we have. But we're not worried or concerned about just enjoying for ourselves. Rather, we're always trying to spread spiritual teachings for the benefit of others, right? Which is service to Krishna. That's devotional service. We don't just try to enjoy. We don't just sit here thinking, oh, it's a nice place to live. It's all for me. No, we're always trying to bring other people here. Like on Sunday, we have an open day. 100 people will come and, we show them this is the way we live. You can enjoy it also. You can also come here and live with us. So that's our spirit. Right? Our movement is based on that, on sharing and giving Krishna to others. So Prabhupada says in the purport, one who has actually come to understand one's constitutional position as an eternal servitor of Krishna gives up all engagements save working in Krishna consciousness, which is what Krishna said in the previous verse. Keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service. Next, number 50. A person engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad actions even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. So this will be elaborated in the next couple of chapters. The next chapter after this is called Karma Yoga. Because Krishna is speaking about karma here. Good and bad actions, that's karma. You do good things, you get good things back. You do bad things will come back to you. We know that because there's a universal law. Otherwise, you cannot explain in this world why some people are born in a very affluent, very comfortable situation, and some people are born in misery. Why is that? That is karma. That's from your previous life. So in this life, right, we're developing more karma. How we act. If we do good things come back to us. If we do bad things come. That's why we know, as Hare Krishna people, we know sometimes people don't treat us properly. But we don't get so concerned about that because we know they will be taken care of. We know there's higher power. No one escapes. No one escapes. You can escape in this life. Sometimes like someone murders someone, right, in this life. They murder someone. And no one knows they did it. And then on their deathbed, at the end of their life, they say, oh, actually, I did that. Right? So they escaped. Just like in Melbourne, one guy murdered 2 girls in the 1970s, 50 years ago. And they just caught him in Italy. After 50 years, they did DNA testing. They found him. So he got caught in this life, but even if he had have made it to the end, there's someone waiting for you. That's why we don't worry. If people don't act properly, we know, don't worry, they're going to get fixed, right? Everyone gets it, right? You can't escape. So Krishna is saying here, rid yourself of good, don't do karma. Don't just do good things or just do bad things. Do spiritual things. Do devotional activities. Do service to Krishna. Because that frees you from all the reactions of what takes place in this life. And as Krishna says, that is the art of work, right? You have to work anyway to do things for Krishna. You're going to work hard anyway in this world. But, we work hard here, relatively. It's like we work. We don't just sit around. We do things. But it's all dedicated to Krishna. Right? It's all for a higher purpose, not just for us. So we can just, let's make a nice garden so we can enjoy it. No, we make a nice garden so other people can come and they can learn about something higher. That's the point. Prabhupada says in the purport, one's ignorance of one's constitutional position can be removed by the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, which teaches one to surrender to Krishna and become liberated from the chained victimization of action and reaction, birth after birth. So we don't want to take birth again. Sometimes people say to us, they come here and they say, do you believe in reincarnation? And we say, yes, because it's not a belief, it's a fact. We don't believe it happens right? We all reincarnate, right? Most people understand that now. Most people understand that's a fact. So, but that's not our goal. Sometimes people say, what do you want to be in your next life? Oh, I want to be an eagle. You see the eagles flying around? You see them? Yeah. There's eagles here. You see them flying. Oh, so it's not peaceful. It's not peaceful being an eagle. You see them when they're flying around. The other birds attack them because they know that they'll attack their young. So it's not peaceful. It's like a war going on in the air. It's not a peaceful existence. So we don't want to take birth again. We want to finish in this life through our bhakti, through our devotion to Krishna, become purified of material desires so that we can transcend and go and live in the kingdom of God, live with Krishna in the spiritual world. And that's where we want to go. We don't want to stay in this world. Out of 1 to 10, how much would you give this world, life in this world, in terms of pleasure?
6.
A 6, okay. And? Yeah, because you're, we'll speak to you about that. One of our guests here, our volunteers, one gave it a 6, and she said that was generous. That's good. That's called healthy pessimism. That's good, because that's reality. Yeah, it is about a 6, and that's a good number. So and the other one gave it a 10. But we'll speak to her in the next couple of days about her answer. It's good. It's good to be optimistic. It's very good, but not foolish. Optimistic is good, but not foolish. Right. So we should rake this cycle, because if we remain attached to this world, we have to take birth again in this world. And you don't want to take birth again in this world because the society is going down, it's not going up. Right? But you look at the planet as a whole. I mean, some of us are going up. That's true, but not as a whole. So you don't want to be born again because you don't know what it's going to be like next time around. It's difficult enough this time. And we don't even know what's going to happen in the next few years. Even today, some of the talk that was going on from leaders, we don't know what's going to happen. So the point is, Krishna is saying, don't stay here, come and live with me. Come and live in the place where everything's free. There's no birth, there's no death, there's no old age, there's no disease, everyone's happy. Or you stay here, on Hamilton Island. Take your pick. One of our volunteers just spent 6 months on Hamilton Island working there. It's not, it might be okay to visit for a few days, but to work there for 6 months, that's not pleasant. That's a different class. We'll give the Hamilton Island class another time. But it's a fact. And it doesn't matter where you go in this world, even you can be in paradise. But suffering is there. That's the nature of this world. Okay, text number 51. By thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in the material world. In this way, they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries by going back to Godhead. Prabhupada says in the purport, for one who has accepted the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of the cosmic manifestation and is famous as Mukunda, the ocean of the material world is like the water contained in a calf's hoof print. Consequently, he becomes qualified to enter Vaikuntha, the spiritual world, where there is neither material, miserable life, nor the influence of time or death. So if you serve Krishna, which is what we're trying to do, if you engage in Krishna's service, this material world, which is difficult to overcome, it's difficult to give up our attachments to this world. But if you engage in Krishna's service, it becomes easy, you become detached from this world. And escaping this world, the ocean of birth and death, the whole ocean just turns into the water in a calf's hoof print. Like our calves up there, like Baliman or John and Yatra, or you've met them. John and Yatra, or any of the calves up there. Yeah, their hoof print is that big. Their little print, so it's very small in the mud. So the water in that's easy to cross. Right? So this world, which is like an ocean, when you serve Krishna, the water just shrinks down. It's just easy to get out of here. Otherwise, it's hard to get. Everyone's trapped in this world. Going through birth and death, reincarnation again and again and again. But you can break all that and you can go back to the spiritual. Unless you want to stay here, enjoy your 10 out of 10 existence. Choice is yours. Okay. Text number 52. It says, passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, when a person is fully Krishna conscious, he becomes completely indifferent to the rituals of fruitive activities because he's already attained perfection. So in the Vedas are have you heard of Ayurveda? Ayurveda, yeah. So Veda, the word Veda means knowledge. So the Vedas means the ancient books from India, the ancient teachings from India, like all these books here. These are the spiritual ones. But there's many. There's Ayurveda, there's all these different ones. So these books, some of them describe how to go to higher planets. It's like there's places on this earth which are very beautiful, like Hawaii or Bali or different places. They're beautiful places. And it's desirable. Many people desire those places. But there's planets, like when you see all the stars at night times, all the stars. Those planets all have life. They're all civilized. It's not like the modern world, modern science tells us there's nothing on them. Right? It's just we're the only planet that has life. No, it's not like that. It's the opposite. They all have life. And some of them, the life or the quality of life is much better than here, much better. So in the Vedas, the ancient teachings, it tells you the things you need to do if you want to go to those planets. But for a devotee of Krishna like us, we're not interested to go to those planets because even if you go there, it only lasts so long and then you have to come back to another place like here. Right? Or if you don't live properly here, you go down into a lower species. Right? So we want to break that cycle of birth and death. So as Prabhupada says here, that when you serve Krishna, you become disinterested or detached from trying to follow the rules and the rituals in the Vedas to go to higher planets, for example. You become detached from those things. You understand the actual goal is to go to the spiritual world, to Goloka, to serve Krishna. Text number 53. When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, and when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. So Prabhupada says in the purport, in the commentary, in Krishna consciousness, one comes directly in communion with Krishna, and thus all directions from Krishna may be understood in that transcendental state. So in other words, we don't follow all the Vedas, all the books that tell us about various options. We just follow the Bhagavad Gita, because in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is very clear. Come back to me. Come back to the spiritual, to heaven, the kingdom of God. Don't worry about all these temporary places that you can go to. Even if it's like anywhere you can think of, which is very pleasant, and there's many very pleasant places in this world. Don't let your mind become attached to those places. Just like sometimes I go to Bali or somewhere like that. But I always think when I'm traveling there, I don't get, people always say, oh, are you excited? Are you excited? I said, no. Because if you get too caught up, it might be the opposite. You might get to Bali, jump off a waterfall and injure your shoulder, which happened to one of my friends. They went to Bali, but then shoulder was injured, or you see people go somewhere, they get sick. Well, all sorts of things. So don't get too attached to these things. Right? We have to be detached from the pleasures in this world. If the pleasures come, that's nice. But if they don't come, that's okay as well. Otherwise, you'll be disturbed in your mind all the time. I heard one story. I don't know if it's true, but I heard it was true. One family from Brazil, they saved up for many years to go on their dream holiday to Hawaii. They got to Hawaii, and when they got there, it rained nonstop for 2 weeks. And they were so depressed, they jumped off the balcony of their hotel. That's all I heard. The whole family jumped off. What's the point? We worked our whole life just to go here, and then we got here and we can't enjoy. So then what's the point? So what Krishna was saying, don't be attached in this world. Okay, so now, text 54. So now Arjuna asks a question, because the Bhagavad Gita is question and answers between Arjuna and Krishna. So Arjuna asks a very interesting question, or actually several questions. Quite often when I'm lecturing or speaking to new people, quite often I'll speak from this section onwards, this small section of the Bhagavad Gita, because it's very relevant, particularly to new people who are coming, because it's something we can all relate to. So Arjuna asks some very nice questions, and Krishna gives some very nice answers at this point. And these answers will continue for much of the rest of the chapter, the answers to these several questions, 4 questions that Arjuna asked Krishna. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak, and what is his language? How does he sit, and how does he walk?" So, Prabhupada says in the purport, the immediate symptoms of a person in Krishna consciousness is that he speaks only for the he speaks only of Krishna and matters relating to him. Other symptoms then automatically follow. So this is interesting. 4 questions that Arjuna asks. How do we know someone who's transcendental, who is self-realized or liberated from this world? How do you know? Prabhupada, who is the founder of the Hare Krishna movement, that's his picture over there, like on the seat of honor. You might have seen pictures of it. It's probably in your ashram. All the Hare Krishna books, he's on the back. He's our guru. You know, he left the world in 1977, but he's the one who gave this to us and started the whole thing. So people used to ask him, are you self-realized? Have you seen God? Have you seen Krishna? And Prabhupada, he would say, if I say yes, how would you know? Like just because he says, yes, I've seen God, or yes, I'm self-realized. How do you know? Because other people do say that and they're not. Yeah, we had one guru in Melbourne. He had an ashram in Mount Martha. He was a guru, had a following, and Swami, people used to come. But he was having sex with the girls, with the followers. You know, they would come and then he would seduce them, and then, you know, multiple. Oh, and then he's actually in jail now. He's in jail. Yeah, good. He's actually in jail. Because the girls were stupid, right, for getting in that situation with him, and he was a manipulator. So he deserves to be in jail. Right. So, but if you asked him, he would probably have said, I am self-realized. But we know he's not. Let's look at his activities, so he's obviously not. He was telling everyone, no, yes, I've seen God, or whatever he was saying. So Prabhupada was asked, and he said, if I say yes, how do you know? How do you know? So now Krishna's going to give practical ways that we can see if someone is self-realized or not. Right? These 4 things. How does he speak? What is the language? How does he sit? How does he walk? So the answer to these 4 questions, this shows someone who is self-realized. So we know that Prabhupada was self-realized because he had all the symptoms. Someone who's self-realized. Even though he wouldn't say he was, but we know he was. Because you study him, yeah, he had all those symptoms. So there's no use just saying that I am self-realized. You have to have the symptoms of self-realized. Okay. So text number 55. This verse is the answer to the first 2 questions. What does he speak? How does he speak? And what is his language? The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So Prabhupada says, the highly developed soul has no desires resulting from petty materialism. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving Krishna. So, the first way that we understand if someone is self-realized, they have to be sthita pragya, which is the Sanskrit that Krishna uses in this verse. Actually, in the previous verse, sthita pragya. Sthita pragya means like fixed, stira, fixed, sthita, like stay. You know, we have the word stay in English. Like stay means fixed. Right? Sthita or stira means like fixed in self. You don't fluctuate. You know, 1 minute you're self-realized, next minute you're not. You know, you're acting spiritually and then you're not. That's not really self-realized. Right? So someone who is actually self-realized, they're sthita pragya, they're fixed. And what is the symptom? The first symptom, as Prabhupada says, is how the person speaks. As Prabhupada points out in verse 54 in the purport, most important is how a person in Krishna consciousness speaks. The speech is the most important quality of any person. How do we know if you're self-realized? Because of what you speak. If you're just speaking material things all the time, self-realized. Right? Because someone who really is a spiritually enlightened person, they speak about those things. And that's how we know Prabhupada was, because that's all he spoke about. He's always speaking about spiritually enlightened things. Like we're doing now. What are we doing now? We're speaking about spiritually enlightened things. Otherwise, we could just speak about, politics, American politics. So interesting. So interesting. Maybe we could speak about that, or we could speak about dogs, or we could speak about so many things, right? But one who's self-realized, he speaks about things which are spiritually beneficial for others, right? So Prabhupada points out, a fool remains hidden as long as he doesn't open his mouth, right? Someone can look like, oh, it looks very self-realized, but as soon as they speak, you know. Because whatever's in the mind comes out through the words and the actions. So if someone's materialistic, as soon as they open the mouth, you know what they're like. Oh, that's what they're like. Because then you hear what they speak. So when someone is speaking about spiritually realized things, then we know, okay, this person is elevated, they're self-realized. So that's the first way that we understand someone's advancement in their Krishna consciousness. Okay. Text number 56 and 57. One who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. Prabhupada says in the purport that 56, a fully Krishna conscious person is not at all disturbed by the onslaughts of the threefold miseries. So no matter what we go through in this world, we don't give up our devotion or our attachment to Krishna and to our Guru. We don't give those things up. In 57, Prabhupada says, one who is not agitated by material upheavals, who is unaffected by good and evil, is to be understood to be fixed in Krishna consciousness. Such consciousness in Krishna situates one in the perfect transcendental position called samadhi. So Samadhi is our goal. Samadhi. Sama, which before the word sama, means equipoised. In English, we say same. Same means like two things are equal. Sama means equal, equipoised. Your consciousness doesn't fluctuate. That's what samadhi means, to fix the mind or to focus. So samadhi means samadhi. You know this word samadhi? Have you heard it? In yoga, they mention this word sometimes, samadhi. Samadhi is like the goal of yoga, the goal of spiritual life. Samadhi means like fixed consciousness. Your consciousness doesn't go away from Krishna. Right? You don't forget Krishna. Always remember him, never forget him. You don't forget. You don't become distracted. And it's testing. It's not easy. Life tests us. And when you take to our life, which is a spiritual life where we dedicate ourselves to Krishna, Krishna tests you because he's trying to train you. It's not like when you become a devotee of Krishna, everything just becomes easy. No, sometimes it's very challenging because Krishna's testing you. I mean, it's a better life than what's out there, but it's not always easy though. There are tests. They come. But Krishna's teaching us to become fixed in our consciousness. Text number 48. One who is able to withdraw his senses from the objects, as a tortoise withdraws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. So the first two questions were answered. How does he speak? What is his language? So in other words, he speaks about spiritual things regardless of what's going on externally. And this is now the third question, which is, how does he sit? What does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit and how does he walk? So this is the answer to the question of how does he sit? So how does someone sit who is spiritually enlightened? The lotus posture. Yeah, very good. Right. But that's not the answer. Right. It's a good answer. But when we're saying sitting, there's a deeper meaning to the question. It's not just the physical posture, but what it means, as it says here, what do you do when you're in a state of meditation? You're sitting in the lotus posture or whatever posture. What's your mind like? Right? And what are your senses like? Are you constantly distracted? And some people find it hard to meditate in this day and age. As they say, they try to meditate and their mind just goes. Many people say that. Mind just goes. That's why for a lot of people, that's why the meditation we do is the chanting. We'll do that tomorrow night. Right? Why do we do that? Because it's easier for the mind to focus. Silent meditation is very difficult for people. So think of nothing. The whole time you're sitting there, you're thinking, "Oh, am I thinking of nothing? What is nothing? Am I allowed to think of this?" So it's like you can't do it because the mind doesn't stop. Right? So what's your consciousness like while you're in a state of meditation? In other words, while you're not active in the world, while you're like in a meditative state, what is your mind like? So Krishna says, be like the tortoise. That's his answer, how to deal with the mind. Right? Be like the tortoise. What does the tortoise do? When there's danger, the tortoise goes, withdraws. So in the same way, when we're meditating, and we teach people, don't meditate you don't go and sit in the middle of a mall in the city and meditate. Why? Because distractions everywhere. So then you have to go really deep. So try to find a quiet place and meditate there. But even while you're doing that, your mind can still be in so many places. So you have to learn to control the mind, withdraw it from the outer world. When you're meditating, that's what you're supposed to be doing. You've got to withdraw from the outer world, internally and externally. Does it make sense? So that's the answer to how does he sit? In the purport, Prabhupada says, the senses of the Krishna conscious persons are used only for some particular purpose in the service of the Lord and are withdrawn otherwise. That is the answer to the question as to how the yogi is situated. Prabhupada says, the devotee must be very strong to control the serpent like the serpents. Because the senses are said to be like venomous serpents. It's hard to control the senses sometimes. You want to touch things, you want to taste things, you want to look at things, you want to hear things, you want to smell things. So it's hard to control the senses. Right? Men like to touch women. Or, these days, people, same sex or whatever it is, but people want to touch. Very hard to control the senses. It's called sparsha bhoga, which means the sense of touch, very powerful. Or look. When women are walking around, like the men are just like that, it's hard to control. Your eyes, right? The sense of touch, all those things hard to control. So we have to purify the senses. Use your senses in a spiritual way, right? Otherwise, very hard to control the senses. But when you become purified and you use your senses for the right thing, otherwise the senses, they're said to be like poisonous snakes, serpents. It's hard to control, like a biting snake. But when you become purified in your consciousness, it's like if you take the fangs out of the snake. Like when you go to India, you see cobras, but they take the fangs out, so there's no danger. One time I was walking in Loy Bazaar in one market in India. Boy came up to me and he shoved right into me and he opened up the basket. He had the basket like right here. He's leaning into me and he opened the basket. This is like a cobra right there. Right? And in my mind, I was like, oh, it's like, well, right there. And then I walked a couple of steps and I was, trying not to freak out, although in my mind I was thinking, oh, God. But then I thought after a few steps, I thought, wait a minute. That snake doesn't have any fangs. So then the fear, it dissipates. So in the same way, when you learn to use your senses in Krishna's service, when you purify and control your senses, then your senses do not give you trouble. Right? And then it's easy to control your senses, right? And they don't become problematic. Right? They don't become a source of misery. In other words, your senses are fine, they're controlled, they're purified. So I'll stop there for tonight. Does anyone have any questions about anything that we discussed? So next week, we will finish chapter 2. So that is your homework for next week. I hope you're keeping up with the reading. Next week, we will finish the chapter 2. Thank you all for coming. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Good to see you all.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
See you soon.
Thank you for your help.
Always a pleasure.
All the best to your wife.
Yeah, she's studying very hard.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
A lot going on.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll speak to you soon.
Okay, Haribol, Prabhu.
Haribol.